Welcome to the Stumbling Spirit, Contemplations on the Path of Resilience. Whether you realize it or not, you are resilient. It's your birthright. As you take in your next breath, know this truth. It's not only about your capacity to overcome difficult situations, but it's about your courage to do the necessary work to heal, learn, grow, and move forward. What you gain is invaluable wisdom. And it's through these hard stumbles in life that we often discover a new purpose that aligns with our spirit. My name is Fabio da Silva Fernandez, Reiki Master, Mindfulness Coach, and Mystical Explorer. Join me as the Stumbling Spirit podcast highlights the lives of extraordinary people like you, sharing transformative stories and beneficial practices of resilience to guide you on your wellness journey. After tragically losing his father as a teenager, my next guest had a profound spiritual awakening that ignited his psychic abilities and life's purpose. With more than 25 years of experience, Shawn Leonard is a renowned Indigenous psychic medium whose mission is to help people heal from loss and develop their own spiritual gifts. Today, Shawn is here to talk about his sacred work and share his traditional Indigenous teachings and ancestral wisdom to guide us on our spiritual journey. It's a pleasure to welcome from beautiful Nova Scotia, best-selling author and star of Spirit Talker, Mi'kmaq psychic medium and spiritual teacher, Shawn Leonard. Hello, Shawn.
Well, hello, Fabio. Nice to see you and finally meet you online here.
Me too. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. So let's go back in time. Your
Okay.
dad had a sudden heart attack and sadly passed away when you were only 16, after which you
Yeah.
received a visitation from him in spirit. Can you walk us
Yeah.
through what happened?
Well, I was 15 when he passed away. It was 1987 and it was on October 16th. And I remember from that day, I mean, being 15 years old, I mean, I wasn't really thinking about a whole lot in life, just getting up in school, etc. And I remember my mom coming in the room to wake me up very quickly and just say, there's something wrong with your dad. He's out in the driveway. And she was calling 911 and for help, and she was panicked a bit. So I jumped out of bed, I went outside, and my dad had just bought a secondhand truck, and it was an old Ford or truck that was outside. And I kind of, walked around the whole truck. I saw the truck door open. There was a hedge between the truck and the ground, etc. And anyway, the car was running. It was cold. I could see my breath, and I walked around the whole truck and couldn't find my father. I thought it was kind of strange. I thought mom was like maybe panicking over nothing. So I went back inside and told her, and she said, "Go out and look again." I looked again, still couldn't see my father. Walked around the whole truck, walked back in. And then on the third time she walked me out, she physically took me out there. And, right in front of the door on the ground was my father. He was laying face down on the ground. And, it puzzled me for years, to be honest, that how is it possible that I walked around that truck twice and could not even see him, and let alone trip over him because I would have had to walk right over him or through him. And I feel obviously it was his time to go home to the spirit world. He had a journey. We all have a journey here in life. And I think that's, sometimes when we're not meant to find people. We're not meant to save people sometimes. We have to kind of like honor the process that people go. I did perform CPR after I did find my father, and to no avail. After what seemed like an eternity, I realized that I wasn't going to be able to save my father. And I could feel his spirit. I could really feel him there, around me, around the space as I yelled at him, I cursed at him, I talked to him, but he wasn't getting back in his body. I could just feel like this is a finale. And it was about a year later that, life went on, and me and my mom and my brother James were really like struggling and having a hard time because obviously my mom losing her husband of 18 years and being a 15-year-old young man and losing, your father, that I was trying to come to grips with all that. And I wasn't always walking the best path in life either at that time. I mean, not that I was terrible, but I was like grieving in my own way. So I used to hang out with some guys, and I was young. I was like, again, 15. I smoked a little bit of weed, Not that there's anything wrong with it. It's legal in Canada. So now, not back then, but that was kind of how I kind of like coped. So one night I snuck out with my friends. I didn't smoke any weed, mind you, but I hang out with my friends and I came back very early in the morning, like probably like 1 o'clock in the morning, snuck through my mom's basement window for her rec room. I slept on the couch and it was probably around 3 or so o'clock that I woke up, or I thought I woke up anyway. And when I woke up, there was this a massive, there was like a ball of light in the room. And the ball of light was at the far end of the rec room. And I thought it was odd. And I get up off the couch. And as I get up off the couch, I could still see myself sleeping on the couch. Now, this ball of light was the purest, whitest light I've ever seen in my life. And it literally grew to about the size of a person. And within a very few moments, my dad walked out of the light. And he was wearing a long white robe. He was not dressed how I would ever think my father would be dressed, to be honest. But he walked out and he knew I was angry. And one of the first things he said to me was, Shawn, you need to calm down. I know that you're mad, but it was my time to go. You need to tell your mom I'm okay, and you need to tell your brother that I'm okay. And I'm like, I can do this. And as he spoke for a few moments, I became fixated on that light behind him. And as I saw that light, I could feel it. I could feel it into the depths of my spirit, my soul, my whole being. I could feel it. And I knew that was home. I knew that was a place that we all have come from and that we're going to return to one day. And all I could think of when I saw that light was, oh my God, I'm going home. And as soon as I tried to walk past my dad, he would not let me. He wouldn't, he got in my way and he says, no, no, you can't come in here. And I'm like, well, I just want to go in and check it out for a few minutes. I'll be right back. And he's like, no, 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 I know you're lying because I knew if I could get in there, there's no way you're getting me back because, and I understand that every person's process of the journey home to the spirit world is different for some people in different ways that they go. But, if you talk to any people that have had near-death experiences, and I don't think mine was a near-death experience, it was like an after-death communication, let's say, that they're similar, that you don't want to come back. And I couldn't even get in there and I still didn't want to come back. But that was it. He told me a few things about, how I was supposed to be serving people and helping people in life at some point. And I didn't understand that because at 15, I mean, who's going to understand anything like that? And I kept trying to get past him and I could feel it, the light, could see the light and sense it. And that was it. He just said, no, you're not to come here. And he touched me in the forehead and I woke up on the couch. And that's what I remember from the event. It was pretty profound. I'll never forget it. It was like realer than real. It's realer than the reality that we're speaking in today. That's the best way to describe it. But the place, the light, the other side, the spirit world, the higher level energies, whatever word you choose to use to call it, it's the same thing. It's the same. Many people just try to use words. And I think if you talk to near-death experiencers, they'll try to sum it up in words, even though they have trouble, is because it's hard to find words that match what you felt, what you saw, what you experienced.
You were saying that after your dad passed away that you were consumed with anger. And a year later, you have this experience. You see him, and it's a really indescribable experience that you have. Did you find that your seeing your dad healed your grief?
Well, no, I still grieve my father even to the day, I don't think grief ever stops. It just kind of you kind of surrender it a bit and then you move into acceptance of, what happened to a person. And I really feel like, that's where he was meant to be. That was his space. So I wasn't, and I can't say I was like angry, but I had kind of like I was frustrated. I had a lot of like feelings inside that were kind of repressed, let's say, because of just the experience and losing your father, not having a father figure. So I can't say it was just anger, but that's again, it's hard to describe things in words sometimes because there's so much around, thoughts and feelings and emotions. But it did help me heal in a sense where it helped me move into a greater space of acceptance. And I think that's the first step in grief and dealing with loss with anyone is moving into that space of acceptance. And it's hard to, over a year, which is pretty normal, and not everybody's on the same time frame or timeline when it comes to grief or healing. that it takes time and it's different for everyone. But after that, I felt like I knew where my dad was. I knew there was a purpose for him being there. I knew there was a purpose for me being here, even though I didn't understand, what the hell he was trying to tell me. But I accepted this is the new reality of life, and it was meant to be this way.
Yeah, grief is really complicated. It is an emotional roller coaster for sure. Do you have in your lineage, in your ancestral lineage, a history of mediumship?
Well, my grandmother, who is Mi'kmaq from Newfoundland, Bugak First Nation, she was born and raised, and her mom was Kitty Burke, and she was or her grandmom was Kitty Burke, and she was like a medicine woman in the community. She was actually the last medicine woman that I know of, anyway, and one of the last people to live in a wigwam in the community too. So she was like really resistant to moving into a house when, colonization and people were coming in. But she was well versed in helping people through kind of traditional ways of medicine. And some of that knowledge and experience was passed on to my grandmom, which included, when you work with medicine, and if you're a medicine person, and there's many kind of variations and thought around that, but you have to be in contact with the spirit world because the spirit of the plants, the spirit of the animals, the spirit of the trees, etc. They all kind of guide you with helping people heal, and whether it's like physically, mentally, or spiritually. So I think seeing my grandmom connect to different spirits over the years, and her knowledge and wisdom that she had sometimes shared with me in regards to the plant medicine that she learned from Kitty Burke, she was very connected in that way. And I do feel like even, in my other ancestors on my other side, because my dad was Métis from Alberta, although my dad didn't have a deep connection to his culture at all in that sense. But I do feel like my dad had some intuitive abilities, even though he was Métis. And he told me a story when he was young. This is not anything that I've written in a book before or spoke about publicly. So before I was born, my dad was in the Navy. He was from Alberta, and that's how he met my mom here in Nova Scotia, because he was, stationed here. Because there's a couple of places you can go, Vancouver or Halifax, Nova Scotia, in regards to the Navy. So he was here working on one of the ships, and then one day he was leaving to go home, and he was heading towards his car, and he heard somebody call his name. And he just said, because my dad's name was Jim. So he goes, somebody said Jim. And he goes, he came home and he told my mom. He said, it's so weird because it sounded like my dad. It sounded like I heard my dad call my name today. And not within an hour or two, there was a call that came from Alberta saying that my dad's father had passed away. So I think we have psychic moments. I mean, I think we're all psychic to different degrees, and we've all had probably personal experiences in one form or another. I think really what psychic ability is, I think it's a natural innate ability within all of us. It's whether or not you choose to continue to listen to those voices or the voice or the nudges, the guidance, but it's always there and available to all of us. And I think when you start to become more open and aware that this is a reality instead of like some type of fictitious thing, and you start to kind of like live in relationship with it as you move through life in your own personal ways, and whether it's part of ceremony or not, then it's something that naturally grows within all of us. And the more that you kind of like trust, tune in, allow, invite, connect with, be open to connections, then I think that that's going to kind of naturally unfold through time. And whether or not, and even for me, when I first started off, I mean, it's not like I was born and go, I must be a psychic medium. I never thought that my whole life. I just thought, as a normal kid trying to, get a job, find a nice girl and like, raise a family, etc. But, sometimes spirit has a different plan for you. And maybe some people are meant to move more specifically into this field, but I think we're all psychic.
Do you think that death is, in your experience, do you find that when people experience death, that that is the trigger or the vehicle for them to deepen their spiritual connection?
I think it's one of them for sure. It's one of those like kind of key moments in life that you have to kind of embrace, whether you're going through a death and dying process yourself or the death and dying process of someone else that you love. And it's because you really have to think about the physicality and the energy of a person, and in a much bigger and broader way than maybe you think in the physical sense of life. So you're thinking about spiritual things or potentials, and that opens you up to ideas and possibilities for that to kind of like show you that there's much more to life than just what you can touch with your fingers. And spirit is a huge part of everything. It's whether you have a personal experience or not, it is there. Whether you believe it or not, it is there. And I think whether you're an atheist, non-believer, whatever, I don't think it's like you have to be like a practicing spiritual person to find your way home. I think when naturally, I don't believe in death, to be honest. I don't, there is no such thing as death. There's only transformation. And transformation from physical to spiritual is a natural part of not only this lifetime, but it's been part of probably like your hundreds, if not thousands of other lifetimes you live too. And it's very much like breathing. There's no different. We don't have to think about breathing. We don't have to think about living beyond physical either, because when our this shell finally takes its last breath, but when we take our first breath into the spirit world, it's a transition that we just kind of like ease into with almost like no panic or worry. If anything, I think people cling to it, this form, thinking this is all it is, and they fight, the transition with fear, and that's sad. I can understand that, but for me and any other person that has had an experience, whether it's a near-death experience or an after-death communication experience and such, there's no fear. It's not like I'm ready to jump off a cliff and say, "Well, take me home today." But I know I'm here for a purpose, right? That there's a reason for all of us being here, and we have to fulfill that to the greatest of our abilities. And because and it doesn't mean we don't have like umpteen millions more lifetimes as time eternity goes on from this world to another. But I want to accomplish everything I can with the time that I've come here with it for. So I just don't want to waste what I've come here for. I've come here with an intention, and I'm going to embrace it to the greatest of my ability to the end of my days until I take that final last physical breath, until I take that one in breath of spirit where I continue to live in that space and place.
It's sort of a dichotomy, right? Because we're living in a physical plane and we are living this life and trying to live this life to the fullest, to the best of our ability. And you're saying how sometimes it's the fear that has us sort of cling on to this life, especially in our final days, when, really because spirit is ever present, as you say, that really it's just an extension of this life into the other world or the other plane, So I
Right.
find that to be really interesting, that sort of dichotomy.
There's no place spirit is not. And spirit's always with us, around us, and it's not some place up there, it's everywhere. There's no place it isn't. And it's just our experience that it's not there. But if you choose to open to it, you actually start speaking the spirit and invite it to be part of your life. You may be like really surprised, or if not weirded out, that there's actually people with you. There's your ancestors are watching over you. Your loved ones are visiting you from time to time, and they'll kind of find ways to kind of show you that they are. But they give you your space and place. They honor your free will choice of whatever you choose. So if you choose to live only in a physical reality and dimensional space and time, then they allow you to have that experience. But if you are open to all that is greater, then start inviting it in and start speaking to it and just see how it kind of unfolds for you, because it'll shift your perspective of what you think reality is in a much greater and better way, from my opinion. And you'll see life a lot differently, but you'll also engage life differently, and you'll see that all of life is a ceremony, and how you approach it, how you meet people, how you move through the world itself. It's not like, okay, well, you have to be, you just have to follow the Ten Commandments. It's about being good stewards of the land, of nature, of the environment, of your fellow human being, of all things, and knowing that that balance is precious and sacred. And I think when you approach life with your own, you don't have to be indigenous to do that. You can have your own ceremonies and own words and own ways of approaching all things. As long as it's in a good way without negative or fear-based thinking, then I think that you're moving in kind of the right direction. And I know the spirit world will kind of like reveal itself to you through all of that.
I love that concept. All of life is a ceremony. That's so profound, and it feels very sacred as well. So let's delve deeper into this. So why is connecting to our ancestors and guides important for our spiritual development?
Well, I think it's you don't need them. Like they will be with you whether you think you need to talk to them or not. It's not like they're going, okay, well, you're not talking to me. Too bad. You're not talking to me. I'm not helping you. No, no, that would be egotistical thinking, and they don't have that. They're going to help you whether you're aware of them or not. They're going to still be there, and they're going to help guide you along the journey that you've planned to come in here to kind of like live and experience your purpose. But I think it enriches life when you connect to them and have interaction with them and communication with them. And, just because I'm psychic doesn't mean that I have my guides like chattering to me every second of the day. But there's moments where I'll hear them, or a thought will get infused in my mind, or they'll do something to guide me in a direction, and I know they're guiding me to do it. I can tell the difference between my thoughts and a thought that's being given to me, and how they're steering me to go a certain way, or to talk to a certain person, or to speak a specific story. So I'm aware of their kind of like gentle, kind of subtle presence in the background. And I think and this is the part, that I think is amazing because I've been able to record my guides over the years. Like I actually, this isn't just an inner voice for me sometimes. I've actually been able to audibly record spirits, audibly record my spirit guides, saying things at different times. I think they're in a different vibrational frequency, obviously. But throughout my years of doing my psychic medium work, and being in places I probably shouldn't be doing things I shouldn't be doing, like in dangerous places looking for ghosts and stuff like this, that I occasionally I've recorded my guide telling me like, well, you shouldn't be here, this is not safe for you. And so it may be not an audible thing that I could hear with my ears all the time, although sometimes it is for me. But I've often gone out to many places and taken a digital recorder and just recording out there exploring. And when I went to listen back, I was aware that there was people there with me. It wasn't people that were there. I mean, sometimes there are people there, like let's call them earthbound spirits or ghosts, because there's still people that cling, even in the so-called what you think is afterlife, there's people that cling to their ego still. And it's not just like as soon as you shed the you take your breath in the spirit that you think that you just move into the bright white light and everything else just fades away. That for most people, yes, but there's some people that have that experience and have fear. It's still our free will to have any experience that we choose, even in the spirit world. And I've met many spirits that are still living on their property, or living on their land, or living in the house that used to be there. And for whatever reason, that's their heaven. And you have to honor that for them, right? Because that's the experience that they've chosen to have. So it's who am I to say, well, you're in the wrong space. You should move on. I can suggest it and guide it, but that's still up to them to move into that the sacredness of higher levels energies if they choose to. But if they want to hang out in the land, in their old property for the next like 50 to 100 years, so be it. I mean, that's their choice. They'll eventually move on because somebody will keep showing up and visiting them, and they'll, okay, well, maybe I'll go today. And then they'll go. But I've had my guides help me to help. And even I have recordings of my guide, Victoria, particularly speaking to some of these earthbound spirits. And I've had a recording of her talking to them and them responding to her. So they're there. There's a lot going on that we don't know, or consciously aware of. But when you become consciously aware of it, and you find kind of like evidential ways of kind of like proving that, or that those interactions are taking place, it's amazing because then you're aware of a much greater whole world that is all around us, that is, more vast than just the physical experience itself. And I feel very blessed to have that wisdom and knowledge, but I like to share it with people. It's not like I'm the only one that can go out there and talk to spirits or interact with spirits. I say go out there and explore, connect to the spirit world, invite them, talk to your guides, help, I request them to say, hey, I'm open to you kind of letting me know that you're more with me in some ways that I can tangibly like prove that you're there. It could be just sitting around the house and you have your digital recorder going and you just have a little chat by yourself. Next, when you listen back, you hear somebody chat back to you. I mean that'll change your sense of reality real fast. Is that wow? Okay, I know I'm only here alone, And even when I've done readings over the years, I remember when I recorded my first voice. I was in Calgary and I was doing readings way back in the day, in my mid 20s and to my early 30s in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And I remember the first voice I recorded because it kind of scared me a little bit because I was getting ready to do a session for people. I had like my own oracle cards that I have. I had some oracle cards. I was flipping cards and getting a kind of good sense before they come of what messages I should focus on, etc. And often, because I used to have a tape recorder to record, I recorded all my sessions. And after this first experience, I always tell people too, when you go home, listen to your whole recording because you might hear somebody you didn't hear while you're here. And that happened many, many times. People go home and listen to the recording of the session and hear their son or hear their father or hear their mother sometimes say something in the background of the recording itself. But this one time, nobody was even there. It was just me and the cat. And I'm preparing. I smudged my space. I'm preparing to do my reading. I'm inviting their ancestors to come, when the person shows up. But mind you, they were already showing up before their person came. And I'm testing the recorder, and I just hit play and record because that's what you did back in the day. Because not always cassette tapes didn't always work, so you had to test them. So I'm testing. I go testing one, two, three, testing one, two, three. And then when I played back, I heard somebody go, "I'm right here." And I'm the only one in the house. There's no one with me. I played it back a few times. I'm going to tell you, all the hairs stood up on my arms and the back of my. And I was like, and then I had to tell the person that came about the recording. I'm like, oh my God, you're not going to believe what just happened before you came. I was like inviting your people doing my ceremony, etc. And they listened to it. They go, oh my God, that's my dad. That's my dad. That sounds like my father. That's who I've come to talk to. It was amazing. So after that time, I would always tell people, when make sure you listen to your reading very intently, just in case that there's a voice in the background of somebody. And I actually recorded over the years many people's loved ones, many. And I'll tell you one other story quickly. I had a young couple that had two sons. Well, they weren't young, they were my age, I guess, but this is probably about 10 or 15 years ago. They lost their son. Unfortunately, he was murdered. And they came with their other son, and during the recording I recorded him because I didn't, he kept saying something about a tattoo in my head, right? And I didn't say it right away, and I was trying to understand what he meant by it, right? Because sometimes I want more clarity before I say anything. So the parents went home and they listened to the cassette and they said, before you told us about the tattoo thing that we were getting for our son, we could hear our son talk in the background and we want you to listen to it. So they play it back to me. You could hear him telling me, he kept going, tattoo, tattoo. And it was like a whisper, that was there that we didn't hear. I didn't hear it audibly, but it was audibly recorded. I could hear it in my mind, the voice, that somebody was speaking it to me. But then when we played it back, you could actually hear it. And it was really, really an amazing reading because one of the other things he came up with was he showed me two dogs in the spirit world with them, two little like Yorkies or something like this. And it was weird names. He told me they had like Yoshi and Yogi or something like this. And it's like, I don't know who the hell Yoshi and Yogi is. Those are the two little Yorkies that we used to have. And then he showed me the Yorkies. And I'm like, oh my God, he's got them with him. So it was, there's different ways that spirit can communicate. It's really cool when you get something audible that is not possible. But they're talking to us all the time. And I think what happens is then when you hear something for once in your whole life, you hear something that is tangible, that is not possible. It changes your reality. And then you go from like, well, maybe this is real to I know this is real. And that strength of belief and trust and faith that you have in your connection and the spirit coming through and how you interact and trusting what comes through, even if you don't understand it, strengthens your psychic abilities like tenfold. It's like you just clicked up a notch in your understanding of this communication and ability that spirit has to communicate with you or people like me. So I think it's amazing. I've had many experiences like that, many, and they're like little miracles, and people could make it scary. I mean, you could have a paranormal show on the Ghost Channel and call it, the demons, right? For God's sakes, like it's silly. It's just silliness, especially when you hear somebody coming through with a message that is loving or caring or kind, and it's a family member or something like this. It's life changing, life changing.
Thank you for sharing those stories. As you were talking, I was like, I'm a believer in spirit, and I'm a believer that spirit can interact with us in many different ways. And at the same time, I will tell you that even though I know my mom who's passed away is with me, I don't need her to show herself to me because I
No,
know that she's
absolutely.
with me. At the same time, I'm aware that if she did want to make herself known to me, that she would. And I want to explore this further with you about when people do see you and what that interaction is like when you see people either one to one or in a group setting, because I want to delve into that a little bit more with you. I have a question around spirit guides. So, can an ancestor be a spirit guide?
Yeah, absolutely. Some of your ancestors. I actually feel most of our guides are probably ancestors, and not necessarily from this lifetime, but from other lifetimes for sure, because we've lived many. I mean, think about we have forever, right? We have this one world that humanity's lived on this world for what, let's say like the last 250,000 years. And that's just an estimation because I don't really know how long we've been here for. And all of us haven't been here either. I mean, imagine way back in 250,000 years ago. I mean, what was the Earth's population at that time? Was it 10,000? Was it 20,000? I mean, how many people are now? Like billions? Where did we all come from? Where did all of our spirits come from? Our spirits has existed before Mother Earth. Our spirit has existed probably beyond the time of many other planets prior to now. It's only we think of our existence in this one earthly kind of frame of reference, and there's other star beings out there. There's other star people, and I have memories of being on another planet. So it's not strange to think that we exist beyond this space and time in this world, but through, many, many, many lifetimes. And we keep coming to the physical reality because it's so vastly different than spirit itself, because we get to experience things in a much different and greater way with hardship and struggle. And, a lot of that does not exist in spirit. So we kind of come to this space like this, in this world or another world, to kind of experience things like that, to learn, to grow, and experience. But I feel like all of my guides I've known, and I don't know, I don't think there are any of them are from my current lifetime. That doesn't mean it's not possible. Because if you've lived, let's say, hundreds of lifetimes with your mother, let's just say, right? You've lived, and maybe in different forms and formats. Maybe she was an aunt in one life, and maybe you were her father in another lifetime. Who knows, right? That you had an agreement prior to coming into this reality, like that she would leave, and at some point you would like her support and help on a specific journey of life that you're going through. And she may have like some ancient wisdom, if not from this lifetime, but from other lifetimes that would, assist you in the best way she could. So she would may come in at a certain stage of your life. And I mean, I have this book. I don't know if you've heard of my book, but Walking with Your Spirit Totem Animals. Have you heard of that book?
I have.
It just came out last October. It's through Hayos Publishing. But I'll give you a sense of premise, a reason why. Like I believe that we have four totem animals, at least four totem animals that walk with us through life. And according to the medicine wheel, this is something that I wrote in the book, that, in the medicine wheel in Indigenous teachings, we have, which is kind of a sacred object that we use to teach things. So there's different stages to the medicine wheel. Well, you have infancy, we have youth, with adult, and we have the elder stage of life, right? And from my experience, even through my spiritual guides, not just my animal totems, through each stage of life that I've kind of moved into, and I'm moving into the elder stage of my life at this point. I hate to say that, but I am. But I've had new guides, or I've had guides that have revealed themselves at that time. And same with animal totems. Like when I was younger, I was very, deeply connected to, the eagle and things like that, right? And then as I matured, it was the buffalo, and then the polar bear, and as of recently, the owl. So I have these at the different stages, I've had different animals, share their kind of like wisdom and medicine with me. And they can be like guides as well. And they can be ancestors because, who says that our experience through reality of lived experience only is pertained to the human experience, right? When we say all of my relations in Indigenous culture, which is a very common term, through every ceremony that we say, it's one thing that is universal through all Indigenous kind of North American Turtle Island perspective. When we say all my relations, we're speaking to the trees, the grass, the ocean, the fish, the birds that fly, the creatures that crawl across the land, the insect nation. Are they not our ancestors? Are we not connected to them? Aren't we from the same source? We are. So, whether you only subscribe to thinking that we only have humanistic guides, right? Which I do believe that we also do have, but I also feel like we have animal totem guides that walk with us through life, and that we may pick up the medicine, or an animal may make its presence aware and known to us. But to answer your question, why I brought that up was just say you lost your mom and you were kind of like at the middle stage of your life. Like I lost my dad, when I was like 15 years old. I was in, not the infant, but the youth stage of my life. Potentially, maybe I may need him in the elder stage of my life, that I'm going to be going through stuff that he has wisdom, that he has expertise, or he would like to help me with. Could my father then step in as one of my guides? He could. He could, but it wouldn't be till then. It would have to be for a specific reason. It'd also have to be something that was agreed upon prior to your physical incarnation. It wouldn't be like, oh, I think I'm going to do this for my son. It would be something that you had already previously set up, because his transition would have already been known in the spirit world, because it was like charted in a sense that that was his time to go. And we would know that, but I would need him at this time to help me face this situation, or to face life in a special certain circumstances. So you can have an ancestor that could be a guide at one of the stages of your life. But obviously they would have to make their journey home before that happened, because each person's experience in the fullest form that we can express here in life is where our focus is. That doesn't mean there's not an oversoul on the other side, because there is. There's a part of us that exists on the other side too. But most of our awareness is within this realm of reality. But we do step back into the other realm of reality. That's why we dream. That's why our spirit is free of this physical form, and we have different experiences that we go through. And then we have to kind of like go through dream experiences to kind of like, let's say, shed fears, or to solve a problem, or to have a connection, right? Is because our spirit is not only, it's not always in this form, even now, that our spirit can move in and out of this form.
I'm really glad that you said that our guides don't necessarily have to be humanistic and that they can come from the animal world. I also like how you say how there's essentially a tether from our soul to the other world where there's a piece of our soul that's there as well. I really like that concept as well. So I
Mhm.
want to go back to something. So what was the bridge? Because you have this experience at 16 where you see your dad, and obviously there's a process between that moment and when you decide to start reading people, right? So what was the leap that made that into a profession?
Well, I started to walk in a more spiritual path. I was raised Catholic. Didn't really align with me very much. I was like a kid, and my mom like literally dragged me into the church every freaking Sunday and made me go to catechism, the whole 9 yards. And I hated it. Like, and I don't think it was bad, but it just didn't speak to my spirit or my soul. And I just really didn't want to be there. And it was just like I was doing something that was against what I want, who I was. And I started to, after my dad passed, the big thing that shifted me was I started to think about my own mortality in my 20s. And it was because my dad he was 42 years old. So I'm now going to be a father of my oldest daughter, Kenzie, which I didn't know at the time. So I figured I better go get my health checked out. Here I am, even though I'm in my 20s, I smoke, I eat pretty fatty food. I don't really exercise, although I think I'm doing all kinds because my job is very physical. So I think that, that should be plenty of exercise. But much to my amazement, I had super high cholesterol. I had like massively high cholesterol in my 20s. And the doctor said, I don't know, how long did your dad live? She said, and like he lived to 42. She said, you ain't going to make it to 42. You better change your life now. So I started to go on this kind of new path of life. Let's say I started exercising. I was like a 180. I started going to the gym every day. I started meditating. I started eating better. I was doing like races. I was like, and it was really about balance in life for me. It was about body, and balance in life has to do with body, mind, and spirit. And when you start to kind of like forget one, then you're imbalanced in some way. So you have to make sure that you focus on all these things about your body, mind, and spirit. So I really, like I said, even though I was going to church, it didn't align with me. So I started to read some more spiritual books like Wayne Dyer books and things like this. And I started meditating more. And, and I saw this lady back in the day named Sylvia Brown. And I was like really amazed by her and some other people too that I'd read books about. George Anderson, who was a medium back in the day. So I was like kind of like intrigued by it all. But that's as far as it went. What happened because I was on this new journey of life and about balance of body, mind, and spirit, I started to notice I was naturally becoming more intuitive in a kind of weird way because I would know things that I shouldn't know, and I didn't know how I knew them, but I just knew. It's clear cognizance. I have the right understanding for it today, but back then I would go to my ex-wife's work even though I wrote it in my book, Spirit Talker. I'll show you my other book, my first book, Spirit Talker. That's my first book, bestseller in Canada. That I go to her work. In the book, it's written differently. I had a friend and he worked at a coffee shop or something. So I changed the story a little bit, but the premise of the story is the same. I would go to my ex-wife's work and because she worked at a restaurant called Montana's. So I'd go pick her up and I'd have to wait for her. And as I was waiting there, sometimes she brought me free food because I was waiting and then I just kind of like vibe people out for fun. And it would be all the workers because, she would know all things about them and I get to meet them too. So I kind of got a vibe for them. And then so we were driving home and I said to her, like, what do you think of so and so? And, that person and that couple, and she goes, why do you ask? I'm like, I don't know. Is that guy like, is he a druggie? Like, is he dealing drugs, And she's like, well, I think he smokes a lot of drugs, but I don't think he deals any drugs. She goes, well, what about that guy? He doesn't seem that trustworthy to me. What if, has he ever been caught stealing? And she's like, no. His father's a freaking minister. He's never been caught stealing. I'm like, okay, well, just a thought. And then I'd say, well, what about that couple? I mean, are they married? Like, who are they? Are they married to each other? Or are they connected? Are they in a relationship? Because no, they're married to other people. She goes, like, why? They think they're hooking up. And I'm like, probably. I have a real strange feeling that they're hooking up. She goes, I haven't even seen them look at each other, so I don't know how you got that vibe. I'm like, well, whatever. So that was it. We let it go. And within a very short time, like a week, she come home. She's like, I don't know how the hell you freaking knew all that stuff, but the cops came and arrested the guy for drug dealing. We fired the guy the same day for stealing money. He got caught. And I caught that couple kissing. And she goes like, how the hell did you know that? Just tell me, how did you know this? I'm like, I did not know. I didn't even know it was true, to be honest, right? These are just vibes, thoughts, feelings. So anyway, she went and told a friend named Jen Syme. Jen Syme, very spiritual lady, and worked at the same workplace. And so anyway, they had a plan that I was going to do a reading for her on Sunday after dinner. But they didn't tell me about it. They just told me after it was all set up. And because Jen thinks after my ex-wife told her that I have some abilities and she wants to come see. So out of interest. Now I was hesitant. I was like, well, no, I don't have any abilities. This is just an intuition, let's call it, right? And so anyway, she comes over. I do the session, which I told her right up front, I don't know what the hell I'm doing here. She goes, I don't care. I just want you to try, do your best. And, I told her about meeting some guy named Dale, which she did meet Dale and she married Dale. And I told her about writing a book, which she's wrote two books, I think now, if not more. And I told her about looking after people's homes and pets, which her and Dale were talking about after they met. And then she goes, well, there's some, I think that's all really awesome that you're able to kind of get that about people. And, you know these things and such, but I was really hoping that you could talk to some people for me. I'm like, well, I mean, I don't know how to do that. She goes, well, you've seen people like, on TV and stuff, and like, could you give it a try? I'm like, okay. So I was kind of put on the spot. And so anyway, I kind of focused on how I'd seen things about people in the past. I just kind of focused, kind of meditatively staring at the floor, and I had these kind of like mental images come into my mind of this person, which looked like a grandmom, pretty basic, right? And I said, well, I see this lady here looks like a grandmom figure to me, and she's so and so tall, and she looks like this. She goes, oh my God, that's my grandmom. I'm like, well, that's amazing, and I thought that's where it was going to end. And she goes, but there's someone else I was hoping you'd talk to. I'm like, oh, great. So I focus and I'm like, I'm sorry, Jen. She goes, keep trying. And I'm like, well, this is weird. I see a young man wearing a baseball uniform and he's bouncing a baseball up and down his hand. And, for whatever reason, that's strange. He just walked into a shed. And I looked at her after I saw that and I said to her, and she cried. And she was crying. And she goes, oh my God, I can't believe you're doing it. And she goes, that's who I was hoping that you would talk to. And I'm like, well, you're going to have to tell me what the hell this is because I don't know. I literally do not know. She goes, well, that was my best friend growing up in high school. And one night after a baseball game, he went home and he hung himself in the shed. And I've always wanted to know he was okay. I've really struggled with his passing since he left. Is he okay? And I didn't know how to answer that, to be honest, at the time, because I said, well, I feel like he's okay. He feels like he's in a good space. He looks well. And, I don't know why he would show me all those kind of, but it was a validation for her to know who it absolutely was. He didn't say a name to me. He didn't say anything. He just showed me the baseball and the baseball uniform and walking into the shed and I saw what he looked like. So I described him from that. And she was very happy with what I had connected to. And this is where this kind of thing just it had a life of its own all of a sudden. I didn't go, okay, well, I'm going to hang out my sign outside. Psychic medium Shawn Leonard's now available for sessions and readings. And I was living my life just as I normally was living it before. But then I had 10 other waitresses call me and go, Shawn, we heard that you spoke to Jen and you connected to so and so, and I would like to come see you. I'm like, why? And they're like, and next thing you know, I'm reading everybody in Montana's. I'm reading everybody, and they told people, and next thing you know, I'm like doing this like at least 2 nights a week and every weekend, and it just kind of and it went on and on to the point where I had to start charging money because it was taking up so much of my time and I was still trying to raise a family, and work a job that was like 4 on, 4 off, like 12-hour shifts, and balance this all out. And then I was booked for like 3 months and then 6 months, and I'm like, what the hell is going on here? And it's something that turned into like almost I wonder what this really all is. I want to explore this. I want to understand this. And it was almost like, in a sense, wanted to explore it to understand this greater. And people, I didn't have to put out a sign in order to say, come to me. It was just people were phoning me and calling me and eventually put up a website and people were finding me. And that was booked for like a year or something at one point. But it allowed me to develop through the process of doing it. And really what it was the trust because I didn't know everything. I still don't know everything. Nobody does. But through the process of seeing this or that, or hearing this or that, or sensing this or that, I've been able to kind of understand what they're telling me, the message, and how I can help or guide people through healing in some way. And some people need that. Some people don't. Some people are happy with just knowing that their mom is okay and they visit them from time to time, and that works for some people. But some people that I've met through the years are hanging on to things like, is my mom mad at me because I had to let her go off life support? Or is she upset with me that I didn't include my sister in the will? There's a lot of things that people carry. And a lot of that had come up during the sessions. They wouldn't tell me. I was like, you're just so funny. Your mom's telling me about the will. She said, you cut somebody out of the will. And yeah, I cut my sister out. You've been carrying this. So why take me to a place that they're internally holding pain and struggle, right? Why would your loved one do that? is because they know this is where you need to hear. This is the message you need to have about this. This is where you need to have healing. This is where you need to kind of work through this in some way, that you've repressed emotions here. So this is where healing can take place. It's one thing to say, "Hey, mom's here," and she says hi, and but then there's an overarching usually message or reason that people need to connect to people, and it's not just to know that they're okay, which is a big part of it, but it's also to know what does mom think about this or etc. And I think that's amazing that it comes through. And sometimes they tell me things I don't want to say, and I've said it. I remember this is going to sound funny. But I was in Regina not that long ago, last year actually, Regina. I did an event in Regina, Saskatchewan, and I was talking to this lady's husband who passed away. He came through. But her husband told me that she was cheating on him before. And I found it hard to kind of talk to her about it. But then her husband brought up something kind of funny. And I'm like, no. And here I am arguing with the spirit in front of everybody. And I'm like, no, I'm not saying that. And she goes, no, it's okay. It's okay to say. I'm like, no, you don't want me to say this. Trust me. She goes, no, I don't care. And I've got nothing to hide. I'm like, well, we'll see. And so she says, well, yeah, you not only were you cheating on your husband, but you have a new boyfriend now, and you're cheating on him with two new guys. And, and then she goes, you're right. And I said, I told you I didn't want to say it. She goes, oh, well, I don't give a shit. She says, I did. None of these people know who the hell I am. I don't care. And she says, I'm living the life the best I can. And I said, I know you are, but there's something that's missing inside you where you feel like you have to fill a void. So this is where she needs healing. It's not about the affair or the people. It's like, what is she not feeling whole in? Why is she staying with a person that only provides monetary value for her in life, but doesn't provide emotional or physical value for her life? It's not balanced, body, mind, and spirit, right? And so that's what I talked to her about in front of people. But she told me to do it. And, some of these things, and I only do live sessions now. I do a private session from time to time. But, sometimes sensitive things come up, and you have to be careful and just gentle with that. Spirit wants to bring you there because this is where they need guidance and help, and they want to help and guide them. And I even insert my own wisdom and knowledge in there into it as well, because that's why I read what, spiritual thought things is so that it can enrich my understanding of how I can guide people greater. So I have a vocabulary that can guide people through these kind of odd things. So having wisdom in the physical world and knowledge helps as well, not just the messages from spirit. It's like, having some sense about how to guide people with specific things. And the more times you do it too, the more experience you have with people in specific scenarios, your vocabulary and understanding how to approach people with that same situation grows. And it's like any person that's specialized in a field, if you talk to a grief counselor, a grief counselor would know the right ways to approach certain subjects, and to kind of like speak to you or talk to you about things. And I think a good psychic medium is very much like that, except they're not only are they relying on the book wisdom that they've gotten over the years, but they're relying on the messages that spirit are guiding you to talk to them about or bring up, even if they don't want to talk about it.
I really like how you said that your work is really about providing guidance. And as you were saying that, I'm like, oh, that really makes sense to me because it is part of the healing process. It's not really only about them dealing with grief and the loss of someone, although I'm sure a lot of people go to your events because of that. But it's really about spirit through you saying to them, hey, you might want to look at this, or you might want to sort of change directions in this area of your life.
Right.
So that's
Well,
really
that's
great.
right. Or they might say something big's coming, like you're going through a legal issue soon. And they're going to say, well, there's something really big legally coming up because I can see some papers and lawyers that are going to be involved. This is going to be really stressful for you, but you're going to be okay. Don't panic. You'll make it through it. It might go on for 2 years, but you're going to get through it. So just remember I said that. And I remember this in a couple different ways. This is way back. I'll take it back to another story. Because when I first moved to Nova Scotia, I did psychic fairs. Because nobody knew who I was here when I moved back to Nova Scotia because I lived in Calgary and I predominantly did all my sessions out there. So I kind of wanted to like get out a little bit here so people could know who I am and what I do. So I went and did a couple like body, mind, spirit expos and things like this. And, 10 to 15 minute readings, like rapid fire, like 12 readings in a day, kind of just, it's a lot. It's a lot of energy and it's exhausting. But so I do them. And I remember this lady coming and she came and she asked me a question about her son. And she said he was away in Iraq or Iran or it was Iraq, I think, or Kuwait or something like way back in the day. And then they showed me that he was going to be in a roadside bomb and he was going to be injured. And then I couldn't hear out of my right ear and I could feel my leg was hurt on the right side and I couldn't move my leg very well, but I was almost like partially deaf in the ear and I felt like an impact from a blast on the one side. And I was a little kind of nervous to give the message, but I know what I saw, I know what I felt, I know what I experienced. And she asked, so I have to be honest. And there's a reason why they want me to give her this message. It's not something you want to give a parent. It's not something I want to, but if spirit clearly gives it to me, I meant to give it. And I have to do it in the best way I can. It's like how you handle this and how you deal with this message is very important. And that's how they'll kind of talk to me about it. So I say, listen, I'm so sorry. I don't want to scare you. But your son, I have a very strong feeling he's going to be in a roadside bomb and driving in a truck. He's going to be injured. I feel like on the right side of his body, there's going to be a blast from the side. I can hear he's going to lose hearing and his leg is going to be injured. But your parents are telling me that they're going to be there with him. And they want me to tell you right now not to panic, that they're going to be with him and make sure he's okay. And then within 6 months, she called me and said, listen, Shawn, you're not going to guess what happened. My son was in a roadside bomb and he's injured and he's partially deaf in his right ear and he's in the hospital right now. She says, you don't know how much that meant to me. It's the only thing getting me through this right now. She says, I'm worried about my son. I can't talk to him and I don't know if he's okay, but I keep remembering that you told me my parents are going to be with him through this. And I trust you and I trust that. And it's exactly, he did recover. He does have partial hearing loss. He does have a leg injury, but he's able to walk and he's well. But it was the fact that her parents had come through, told me what was going to happen to prepare her and to help her know not to panic because of the stress of like that happening. And that's what got her through it all. And it gave her the peace to know that this was part of his journey and everything was going to work out in the end. So I can remember certain ones like that they're profound. It's not something I've never given a message like that to anyone else in my life. It was very kind of like specific for that person. And I'll tell you another one, just how messages can affect people. This is now an audience. In Halifax, Nova Scotia, I'm doing an audience setting. And I have this little young guy come through to me, and I could tell he was injured in an accident because I could see him in the car and I could feel like I was hit on the side from the car, and I knew it took his life immediately. And he loved little dinosaurs and things like this. And he showed me the little dinosaurs that he loved. And he talked to me about a playground where his mom was going and leaving dinosaurs for other kids to find. And they even made like a little spot there for their son in his memory or honor at this little playground. So he brought that up, but something that was really cool during the event that again, very unique and specific. He come through and he says, Mom, because I started feeling my liver and I could feel pressure on my own liver. Now, because through psychic abilities, there's a depth to understanding how this works, right? Because claircognizance is like the understanding, clairsentience is the feeling part. But when you put these together, sometimes I can feel something, but I know what they're trying to say about it. It's not like they say this is it. It's like I just psychically know what they're trying to tell me about the liver. I said, by chance, did your son have any of his organs donated? And she goes, yeah, we donated, his liver, his eyes, and, a few other things. I said, funny that you mentioned his liver because I can feel my liver as you can watch me holding where my liver is. Do you know who got your son's liver? And she goes, no, they wouldn't tell us. I really wanted to know, but they wouldn't tell us who these people are. He says, tell my mom she's going to find out who got my liver. I'm like, okay. I said, he just told me to tell you that you're going to find out who got your son's liver. Because I heard it was somebody in Toronto that got it, she said. And then instantly, someone in the audience goes, I know who got your son's liver. And she says it was my friend's son. And I know who, maybe I can talk to her and see, I'll cry thinking about this because it's like so profound. Like it was a moment that was so powerful. And it happened in real time in front of an audience with an audience. That it was like the revelation took place in that moment. And it was like, of all people in all the world, there's somebody who has a best friend that's also from Nova Scotia whose son received her, this lady's son's liver. And she goes, I wasn't sure if it was him until you said certain things, and I knew it was him. And so I think that they had a conversation from my understanding because of all that. But it gave that mom like a sense of knowing that her son saved other children's lives and that her son still lives on in the physical world in some way through these other people. It's just amazing. See, this, when you do this work, you have to surrender your ego and you just have to be open and fully vulnerable to what comes through and work with it in the best way you can and trust, even if you don't always understand. And when you step into that space with spirit and messages through mediumship and spirit connection communication, it's a journey for you too. Because even though I know this is all real, it's all possible and it's all real. And I get to have that experience continuously throughout my life. I don't read a book to see these stories. I have these experiences in my life reveal themselves and I'm part of it. And that's the gift, is being part of the process. The gift is not being able to be psychic. The gift is being part of the experiences you get to share with other people that are you're helping heal through their process of grief, loss, or this deep desire to know that their son had helped somebody. It's amazing. And I can't see anything else in this world that I'd rather be doing. And, through my books, Walking with Your Spirit Animals or Spirit Talker or my Oracle card deck, Wisdom of the Elders, and I have a new book I just kind of finished writing, which is coming out next year. I want to share what I know. I want to share what Spirit shares with me. I want to put it out into the world and help people understand my perspective of life, not in the hope that they become me, but in the hope they become themselves with their own deeper, rich connection and their own willingness to get out there, explore, and trust and be connected to spirit in their own ways. Because that's the gift, is being part of that and living life as a ceremony.
That's the gift, is being a part of the process of helping others heal. I really love that. That's so beautiful. That's so beautifully said. And thank you so much for sharing those stories too. To my listeners, what are your thoughts on my conversation with psychic medium Shawn Leonard? I'd love to hear from you. Just DM me on Blue Sky at thestumblingspirit.bsky.social. So you were mentioning that you're an author, you've written several books, you are a spiritual teacher, you deliver courses and post teachings online. I do want to go over something that you talk about that I think is really important, and it relates to this concept of walking in a good way, and it
Mm,
relates to the seven sacred grandfather teachings. So I'm
mm.
wondering whether we could go through the seven sacred grandfather teachings together.
Okay, for sure. I have them like listed all here. They're all on my cards too, just my Wisdom of the Elders Oracle card deck. But the seven grandfather teachings are typically in Anishinaabe teaching from like Ontario and more Western Indigenous kind of culture. But we've kind of like taken it because I'm Mi'kmaq from Eastern Canada, but we've taken type of the principle and even we've changed some of the animals, but I kind of like subscribe to the way that the Anishinaabe people have done it in the way they teaching. So now each of the seven grandfather teachings have animals that represent each of these teachings. So the first one is wolf humility. And so, to be humble like a wolf is like, they operate as a pack and they have to kind of work together in a sense. So you really requires to be humble and, when to be in a leadership role and when not to be in a leadership role. There's a lot of humility that comes from, connection to the wolf. Now, truth turtle, which is the second of the seven grandfather teachings, is a great teaching in a sense because I really feel like turtle best represents truth, and not because I teach it, but because of the seven grandfathers do and the elders do, is because literally on the back of the turtle, and I don't know why they don't say turtle truth time, but it actually has a natural clock built into it of Mother Earth. So if you look at the back of a turtle, there is 28 markings within the outside of the turtle shell, and there's 13 on the inner part of the shell, representing the whole year. There's 13 moons, and if you break it down into an indigenous calendar, there's 28 days in every moon, as opposed to like 12 months, and some days, some months having 31 days. But if you break it down to 28 days and 13 moons, that represents a full calendar year. So how is it possible that that is engraved in the back of a turtle unless he's meant to carry the truth of time itself? And truth also is something that is slow and deliberate, and is meant to be not rushed in life in some way. So the medicine of the turtle best represents that. Now, the third grandfather teaching is bear bravery. Bear represents bravery for obvious reasons because many bears they're ferocious. So when they approach things, they have to kind of draw on their inner strength, which is from their massive size, etc. But they have this, there's times where they have to call in their inner spirit from themselves, which is that bravery. And just like a mother cub, when facing maybe another larger grizzly or what have you, you know, even though she may be small and protecting cubs, there's this bravery within her to overcome all obstacles and odds no matter what. And she will like back down the biggest bear if need be, because, she has to call upon the spirit of bravery itself. Now, four, which is like part of my totem animals, which is eagle and is love, unconditional love. And so why do we say, and as you can see as well, like it's even on the front of my book, as you can see here too, up here is the eagle with the heart, but eagle represents heart medicine and unconditional love. And it's because we feel that in our culture, indigenous culture in North America, the eagle flies higher and closer to grandfather sun. So we say that is, we see grandfather sun is like a first physical emanation of light within all solar systems, which create all worlds. So it's kind of a center point. Let's say it's the heartbeat of our solar system, right? And because the eagle flies as close as possibly, in human life, in the animal life, as to the sun, we feel like that's the first light comes to the eagle. And also the unconditional loving energy of the ego itself. When you need to approach a situation in life in some specific way, let's say you're going through something in life. Now, when an eagle is facing, let's say, the storms of life, the eagle can fly higher than any of the other birds, fly above the clouds, above the storms of life, and wait for the storm to subside before coming in and coming back down the earth. So it's like raising its energy so that it doesn't have to deal with what it's going through in the present moment until maybe something passes by. So eagle represents that best. Now, another one of my totem animals, which is respect, and the bison or buffalo, we call them. I know that when I was young, they said, "Hey, stop calling the buffalo, buffalo. They're meant to be called bison." But in indigenous culture, we just call them buffalo, Tatonka. So the buffalo, it's given its whole life for humanity in a sense. It's gave its whole being. All of its hide, its meat, it's every part of the buffalo was used to sustain communities. And now, out of his respect, for us, there's a balance. Now, the respect and I've been to many communities that actually have buffalo, like in Satuna First Nation in Calgary, and a few other places that were filmed in Spirit Talk, or the TV show on APTN. But now this respect is mutual because now that they've provided for Indigenous people for so many years and they've almost become extinct, now there's this kind of reciprocal energy of respect. But now it's our time as people, as Indigenous people, to provide life for the buffalo. So we now have herds that we keep, we nourish, we maintain so that we can keep them still alive. And then men, maybe one day, if the world keeps going the way it is, we may have to rely on them again for sustenance or for to help us with our tools, etc., because we don't know the arcs and the ebbs and flow of reality in life as such. So there's this kind of like reciprocal nature to respect. It's something that you want given to you, but it's also something you have to give. It's not something that that has to be reciprocal in all parts of nature and in all the ways that you approach it. Now, the sixth grandfather teaching is the beaver and its wisdom. So why we say wisdom is held with the beaver is because it actually the beaver is one of the only animals that can go and change the architecture of the forest or change the architecture of reality around itself, but does it in a responsible way. It doesn't just kill all the trees. It creates sustainability. So it's really about it knows that it can't like just take all the trees or it would lose its own life. So it has to create a sustainability. So it cuts down what it needs for its dams, builds these big areas that can create, geese and waterfowl and things like that and fish to kind of flourish. So it creates a whole ecosystem of sustainability. So when you're looking to create like an environment around you that is sustainable, then the beaver or the wisdom of the beaver is one that you could call upon. And even with the beaver, I think is so cool because they're a lot smarter than we think they are. Even when they're like, if you ever watch a documentary on the beaver, like when they're cutting down trees or gnawing them down, they will actually gnaw the tree down. And when it gets close, they know and they stop and listen. Because if they can hear it cracking, through generations of, and this is this ancestral wisdom and knowledge that they've carried, they know that if they stand too close to the tree it's falling, they could risk death. So they wait, and when they hear it cracking, they move away so that the tree doesn't fall upon them. So, where does that wisdom come from? From experience, of course. So when you have to draw in experience from your other lifetimes, the beaver wisdom or beaver medicine is good to call upon as well. Now, last but not least, is the seventh grandfather teaching, which is Sabe, or other people may know him or her as Bigfoot. Now, Bigfoot represents the medicine of honesty. And why does Bigfoot represent the medicine of honesty? Is because Bigfoot is different. Bigfoot is like vastly different than maybe many of the other creatures that we become familiar with in the forest that we may see today. So it's authentic, one, but it also has to be honest with who itself is. So when you have struggled with identity, if you struggle with your identity in life and who you say you are, the Bigfoot medicine is a good one to call upon to help you identify with you with pride, and with all the seven grandfather teachings mixed together in a sense, that to be who you are and to be honest with who you are within life and not worry about what other people think, but about what you're doing in life is what's most important.
So, for our listeners, I just want to clarify that these are essentially seven virtues to live life in a good way that are attributed to seven animal totems that represent or embody each of these virtues.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's amazing that the indigenous culture, it's been passed down in that way through teaching and oral teaching that we have these animals to kind of remember these aspects of ways that we can approach life.
I really liked how you said that Bigfoot is related to honesty and that we can call upon this medicine if we have issues with identity. And what I find very interesting about it is that it straddles two worlds, right? It straddles the world of reality, but it also straddles the world of mythology. And so I'm wondering whether you can talk about what Bigfoot
Well,
represents from an indigenous perspective.
Well, we don't believe that they're fictitious anyway. We believe that they're real. But I do also feel that they're interdimensional beings, just like we are. We're interdimensional beings. But because, if in humanity, many people live life and they go to places that people have once lived, and you may see an apparition of a person that once lived there, right? You see a person, the energy of the person still exists in the space. And I feel like many times the sightings of Bigfoot are this interdimensional kind of sightings that they can come into reality or physical world for a short time, but they have existed on Mother Earth in the past. like these are ancient creatures from a long time ago that have walked upon, very much like the dinosaurs, even though we maybe not have found the bones of them yet somewhere. But I do feel like we may find the bones of them one day. That I do feel like that they have walked upon Mother Earth, and they no longer walk upon Mother Earth as we do in the physical sense. But I do feel like they will still walk here spiritually through the dimensions of space and time.
From a spiritual perspective, can you or do you have a felt sense of where the world is going today?
Well, I mean, there's lots of ebbs and flows within the world. Unfortunately, there's like some dark things that happen. And, we're going through some dark times right now, obviously. There's a lot of change, especially with government structures and things like this and political systems. In my opinion, I think all of our political systems pretty much around the world are flawed in a big way. And the flaws of these political systems are just becoming more widely seen at this point, which is sad because we'd like to feel like that we're in a kind of good happy space and we've got it all under control, but really we don't. And I think it's going to create reform in the world over time, but you can't see where it's broken unless you see where it's broken. So you have to really kind of expose the fallacy of what we think our government structures is, and then eventually we'll move to a more unified worldly view at some point, because I don't feel like we're at the end of the world or end times. We're at the end of an era, let's say, of way we see life and the way life is approached. But I do feel like we're still going to be here on Mother Earth. But I do feel like our how the world operates and works together is going to vastly change. And it's going to take some time. There's some growing, pains from all this for sure. And I hate to see people, die in wars and things like this. But there it's unfortunately that's happening because it is happening in the world, whether it's in Iran or Palestine or you know the other place over near Russia there I can't think of right now,
Ukraine.
Ukraine. I mean, these are just wars of our current time, but this has been ongoing forever, forever. I mean, it's just death is more of a larger mass scale, I think, these days because there's it's just hard to watch and to endure, to be honest. But I think more truth of political systems, corruption, wrongdoings is just going to become more and more apparent. And then we're going to have to really look at ourselves and say, okay, this is a broken system. And why aren't we together as like a human nation? Like, we think of ourselves, oh, well, there's us and China or us and Russia and us and Iran. I mean, what a weird way of looking at the world. Like, why can't we work together in helping everybody and not feeling like we have to be the richest or the best or the greatest or have the most greatest weapons? It's an egotistical sense approach to life. And when you have imbalance, it's unhealthy. It's body, mind, and spirit. There's a balance. We have to have balance in all areas of not just self. And it maybe start with self. And then that ripples out into the world with all people. And hopefully it will move out into, the countries in time, maybe not in my lifetime, but it will in time. And hopefully then we will be able to be a human nation that works together to support each other as opposed to like a community. In the community, you don't cast out people in your community that if they're struggling or having problems, you help them. We don't own there's no ownership in community. It's just us. We're here to support each other and create a sustainable environment for which we can live upon, hopefully for a long, long time. But we've got that skewed as well. And I think to really see that it's broken, it has to be seen as broken before we just say, hey, we need to fix this. We need to change this. I don't know if anybody would ever listen to me anyway, even if I went to all the governments and told them that we need to kind of work together. It's like almost like a fairy tale, you can have the grandest vision of for the world, but is anybody really going to listen to it? It has to be all of us, and not just people within Canada or North America or Turtle Island. It has to be all people in the world, which includes people of China, includes the people of Russia, includes the people of Ukraine and Iran and Iraq and everywhere. We have to, like, how can we support each other? How can we all be good in life? And how can we all share a world together that is not destroying itself or destroying ourselves or destroying the world itself? Because if you, and there's this word kind of phrase that, the white buffalo calf woman prophecy. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's in my book, Walking with Your Spiritual Animals. There will be one day we realize we can't eat money, and hopefully that day sooner than later.
So you alluded to the prophecy of the white buffalo calf woman. Can you elaborate a little bit more on
Well,
that?
white buffalo calf woman brought the pipe back to the people ceremony, right? And this is how I started this today, was that life is a ceremony. It's sacred. All life is sacred. And how we approach and move through it, how we treat and honor everything within it is a ceremony and sacred. And that's what White Buffalo Calf Woman brought. Because there was people that were lost and had lost their traditions and their cultures and their ways. And what happened was White Buffalo Calf Woman showed up and then eventually taught them about the pipe and the sacredness of prayer. And then she had died and she said that, or she disappeared, I guess. She disappeared and vanished, that she turned into a white buffalo and she said she would return again one day as a white buffalo to remind us that we have to walk in a sacred way. And there was, what is it, on Spirit Talker in season 4, I went to a community that had, I think, 13 white buffaloes. That's a pretty high number considering it's like the odds are like one in millions that one would be born. So I do feel like there's signs that we have to look at life differently than we have been. But whether anybody's listening or watching, that's a different story. Some of us are, maybe some of us aren't.
What does resilience mean to you?
The indigenous people have had to be resilient. We've been through tremendous things. Indigenous people have been through tremendous things in Turtle Island, and yet we still stand, yet we're still here. And yet, even though our ceremonies were stripped from us, we remember them. Our ancestors will help you remember them too. They will help you remember the sacredness of all life, not just the sacredness of war or fighting or weapons or dismay or separation. It's the thing that's tearing us apart. And we have to find ways to pull us all together. We're all living in a great tapestry of life. And, if you look at a tapestry, and this has been described by near-death experiencers, that some people that have had near-death experiences have gone to the other side and they saw that their whole life plan and chart was a great tapestry woven into all the other tapestries of other people and all living things within the world itself. And there was a lot of dark things in the tapestry, but that's what brought out the brilliance of the light in the tapestry itself. Is you have to have darkness sometimes to see the light in the greater picture of things. And I think that's what humanity is going through right now, is a dark time, but it will eventually lead to us seeing things in a much better way. But we
So,
can't be passive. We have to be good stewards. We have to be willing to get out there and be who you are authentically and honestly, and help the world heal, help the world to move in a good way. And it's not just me as a psychic medium, but all people, and no matter who you are and what walk of life. Because if you change and you change the people around you, then the world changes. But it starts with you. It starts with each of us. And then that's how that kind of light kind of ripples out to the world. The light always overshadows the darkness.
so how can we, in your view, develop more resilient qualities to be able to bring ourselves more together as a humanity?
Well, I think I mean, is this word, it all starts with love. All there is love. So love everyone unconditionally. See the humanity in every person, no matter how bad they are. Love everyone unconditionally. You don't hate people, love them. Help them be different, be well, find a better way in life. That resilience, it all starts with love and how you approach everything, because that's your true source. That's our true source.
I really like how you say that love is the source of us being able to cultivate that resilience and to connect with people, all people, even those that we don't necessarily align with. That's such
Right.
a powerful thing to say. One of the topics I'm exploring this season is the interplay between compassion and resilience. And I know that love is a key part of compassion. I'm wondering whether you have any more thoughts around that.
Well, compassion is an aspect of love because when you love somebody, you can compassionately do good things for them. You be compassionate for where they are in life. Compassion is very kind of intertwined with love in a sense. And I'd say that compassion for all things. I mean, that's something that the Dalai Lama would really kind of teach, and from that kind of perspective, more so than me. But I would say that that's still an integral part of unconditional love. Is like it's still an aspect of the one. It's an aspect of the whole. It's not separate from. It's connected. And I think that if you can be compassionate in all aspects of life for humanity and all the world itself, then that's a good place to start. But that's kind of like that word is almost like there is no words. This is the thing. We've created words. You know what I mean? Is a language that we've created to understand a concept about how we approach things, right? So compassion and love are irreversible. They're reversible. They could be, you could go say one or the other, and it's the same. There's no separation. It's the same light. It's what other word you use to describe it is still the same thing. So and I know people get caught up in language sometimes, but who are you to the core? How do you approach life from your core? Who is your true self? And be that with, your utmost ability within the world. And that's really what's going to shift and shape the world in a different way. And every spiritual teacher of the past has known this. Walk as your spiritual teachers, be as your spiritual teachers. Like Jesus would say, be like me. You can do all these things and greater. This isn't something that I can do, and this is within me, and it's also within you. This capacity. If your capacity is to heal people, if your capacity is to be a counselor for people, or a psychologist, or maybe a great medical doctor, how you deal with people and approach people is that's the compassion. That's the unconditional love. It's just who are you into your core is really what matters. What is your source? What is this source that was within you that can shape and shift the world? And whether it's compassion or love, I think it doesn't matter as long as you come from that same space.
How can people reach you if they want to contact you and learn more about your work and upcoming events?
Well, if you want to find out where I'm going on tour, etc., some workshops that I'm doing, and or learn about my books and the card deck, etc., you can go to my website, Shawn, SHAWN hyphen, which is the middle line, Leonard, LEONARD.com.
Indigenous Mi'kmaq, Shawn Leonard is an internationally renowned psychic medium and spiritual teacher. Shawn, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really do appreciate it. I really appreciate you being so open and sharing your gift and your wisdom and the wisdom of the ancestors. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Fabi, for having me on. I really love sharing. You have to get out there and share what you know. It's just part of like getting it out there to do what you need to do. And the Creator didn't gift us with this wisdom or this knowledge or this story or this understanding if it weren't not meant to be shared with other people. So that's why I'm here.
Thank you for listening to The Stumbling Spirit, Contemplations on the Path of Resilience. This is Fabio da Silva Fernandez. Join me again for another episode of transformative stories and beneficial practices to guide you on your wellness journey. If you wish, you can follow and DM me on Blue Sky at thestumblingspirit.bsky.social. Until next time, take a deep breath and another step forward on your path of resilience.